What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to bring out this video on weapon mods and the meta and basically discuss some of the changes that have come to the game recently as a patch from the 2nd of September made some modifications to some of the mods, so we can test some of that out and see if it's any good. And also just discuss the whole topic around the meta, Moaning Winds, Fortress and all of that, and basically throw my 2 cents in as to what I think the solution could probably be to the problem, as well as just some general discussions. Now that part of the video is probably going to get a little bit ranty. I am unscripted and I'm just basically going to get this off my chest, but as I said, the video will then be essentially divided into 2 parts. We will just look at some of these weapon mods that have been buffed in the first part, and then the second part we'll discuss a little bit of theory. There will of course be timestamps in the description below, so go ahead and jump to those relevant sections if you want to. But in any case, without any further ado, let's go. So firstly, when it comes to weapon mod changes, we had a patch on the 2nd of September that basically addressed 5 different mods: Winter Blast, Ultimate Anomaly Surge, Claymore Torrent, Ultimate Storm Whip, and Strings of Gauss. This was it was a little bit strange for me that these were the only 5 mods that were targeted, but essentially in the dev post they mentioned that here are some small changes that we've made already. We're trying to make these tier 3 mods a little bit more viable, but our gears are still turning on the whole Moaning Winds Fortress situation. But you have a few changes so long while we're still ruminating on what else to fix. And I know that that's like maybe a super negative hot take on that, but it is what it is. Now, while I was on stream the other night, actually I think it was when we were discussing with Cloud Plays, is that I actually want to build a Thunderbird that already has Ultimate Storm Whip on it, and then I want to swap its second mod out with Strings of Gauss. I think that would be quite interesting. And so here we can see that Ultimate Storm Whip has had its damage increased by 40%, which is quite a big damage increase, right? And then we can see that Strings of Gauss has had its damage increased by 162%. Now that's huge. Now the basis of this weapon is of course that you have something that's really good at dropping down single point DPS in the form of Ultimate Storm Whip, but at the same time as well, very much like what you get from something like Bone Shrapnel, you have Strings of Gauss that pulses out this AoE damage around targets that you are just shooting. You don't even have to kill them, like in the case of Bone Shrapnel. So I thought that it would be a great weapon to try and use, and I built it, and then I went and I chose 2 different classes that we could test it out on. Now in the footage in the background we have 2 different characters that have been set up, and one running with Thunderbird and one running without. In pillar 1 and 2 we have Cookie Cutter, Ash Blast, Overheat Pyro. Pillar 1 is using a Death Shield with Fortress and in my case Shadow Combat on, which is the standard way in which I run it. It is the most efficient way for me to play that particular setup. And then pillar 2 is exactly the same thing, but just with Thunderbird with this mod configuration that we just discussed instead of the Death Shield. Now in both cases I am not doing any weapon swap shenanigans, anything like that, so I'm not bringing Moaning Winds into the equation at all. And I'm essentially just running it. I'm not running it hyper sweaty or anything like that. I'm playing it as if I'm hanging out with mates with a beer in my hand, because in actual fact when I was recording this footage I was hanging out with mates with a beer in my hand. Pillar 3 and 4 is your standard firepower blighted rounds techno. So the pillar 3 is using Dark Sacrifice, and I'm actually using an Absolute Zero with Ultimate Freezing Bullets and Dark Sacrifice on it, which is a great setup for that kind of build. And then again our just created Thunderbird is in pillar 4 there. Now the reason why I wanted to record this is because this is going to feed directly into the point that I'm going to be making at the end of the video. But the thing here is that basically your weapon in both class choices, because we've got the best of both worlds here now. We've got the best of the anomaly power world, and we've got the best of the firepower world here. In both cases, yes, weapon choices do matter, and especially in the anomaly side, for instance, not having fortress on your weapon, it just nerfs you with like 40% that anomaly damage, which is a big thing. But the point is that, bearing in mind that the gold completion time for Boomtown is 6 minutes and 30 seconds, you can see that in pillar 1 and 2, I came in well under that 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and that was with using this Thunderbird in the second pillar and not having access to fortress. Is it as fast as using fortress? No, not even close. But the point is that I was able to do it quite comfortably, and the goal here is, of course, to complete a gold run. In the case of pillar 3 and 4 from the firepower side, here you start noticing a problem though, because while pillar 3 I was able to do it obviously within part time, beating it by about, let's say, a little bit more than a minute, I just missed it in pillar 4, and that's because I don't have access to something like Killing Spree or Dark Shrapnel or something like that, and that severely nerfs the damage output of a firepower build. So we're starting to get to the point that I'm trying to make, and that is that if the goal of that particular patch was to bring those 5 mods into a range where they could compete with something like Fortress, or maybe in this case Moaning Winds, or even with Killing Spree or Dark Sacrifice, that of course didn't happen, because using just that weapon and swapping it in, we could see that it was still unfortunately inferior to what we could consider best in slot mods for a specific build. And that to me is kind of like the point, and we're gonna get to the to the ranty part of the video now, so buckle up. But that to me is kind of like the point, and it's a weird thing where we find ourselves in a position right now where it feels to me like, due to certain people or a certain vocal minority complaining about what is to be considered the meta of Outriders, there's this idea out here that all mods must perform equally and all mods must be equally good. And if that's the case, then there would be no such thing as a meta to begin with, right? Or more specifically, the point is that you want the game to have certain mods that rise to the top, certain mods that are better than other ones for certain things. Now that brings me to the main point here, and that is that I don't understand who People Can Fly are trying to please, who they are trying to do this for, to essentially remap this meta and address this meta as they've been putting it in the 2 past dev posts. Let me explain by basically unpacking how I think about this. And when I think about the people that are left, and there's not a lot of us, right? The game hardly ever peaks above like 2000. I think it hasn't peaked above 2000 in 3 weeks time. I could double check the Steam stats, but I'm just going off the last time I checked it, and regularly dips below like 700 or something like that, and that's on Steam. Of course, I know there are other platforms that play it as well, but it's kind of like a good barometer to understand where we stand. So there's not a lot of us left, and I would say that even though there's not a lot of us left, players kind of fall into 4 camps. The 4 camps would be, first of all, the camp number 1 are people that still play the game, they still make builds for the game, they still do expeditions with friends, they still run people through Eye of the Storm, and they have multiple setups, they have multiple characters, they have multiple builds on those characters, they've got tons of guard rolls because they farmed the game to fucking shreds, and I put myself in that camp. Now, I don't mean to speak for other people, but for the sake of simplification, I would say that that group does not want the meta to change, or at least they don't want the meta to change by nerfing things within the meta. Then if we look at group 2, we have speedrunners. Speedrunners, there's a wonderful speedrunning community, and I don't think it's super large, but in this game there's sites that record these times, there's people that post these videos on YouTube and wherever, and essentially they've created these meta perfect cookie cutter builds that use specific mods and that perform best with those specific mods. And Moaning Winds and Fortress, for instance, on the anomaly power side, feature heavily in those metas, or in those mod groupings. And these, I can say for a fact that this group also for sure would not want you to touch Moaning Winds and would not want you to touch Fortress. simply because those are the most efficient ways to play and to finish, and those are the ones that the records are being set at. And more importantly, if you touch those mods, then most likely the meta for speedrunning could shift, for instance, in the direction of firepower builds being more efficient, because they don't essentially get nerfed, right? There's no changes that impact them directly. But then we're in a slippery slope here, because once you address Fortress and Moaning Winds, then for instance, maybe, I don't know, if you break Moaning Winds to the point where it's worse than clip combustion, then people just end up using clip combustion. But more importantly, as I was saying, it could pivot in the direction of firepower builds being more efficient for speedruns. And then what's next? Does Dark Sacrifice and Killing Spree also get reined in because they are now too powerful as well? So that was group 2. And the reason why I split group 1 and group 2 apart, even though it's both groups of players that still play the game, is because the goals of those players are different. Like I think it's possible that you can belong in multiple groups that are making it, but again, for the sake of simplification, imagine that you only belong to one. I like speedrunning. I think it's cool. I dabbled in it a little bit, but it's not really for me, and so I put myself in group 1, right? But I feel like speedrunners have a different goal from the game. They're of course trying to set, different times, and they're trying to take one particular map and just be really good at it, or one particular build and just be really, efficient with it. And so the goals are different, and that's why I split them. Anyway, just went off on a tangent explaining something which maybe was self-explanatory. Then when we get to the third group, you have people that are just starting out the game right now. They just recently started playing it, or maybe they played it for a little bit at the start, and then because it was so toxic at the beginning and people were so negative about the game, and I mean they kind of still are, but they kind of went away, and now they heard that legendaries drop more often now, and that you don't get one tapped anymore and everything. So now they're coming back and they're playing the game again. These players in my mind are not players that want this change, because again, this change doesn't really affect them yet, and by the time they mature to later in the game, they're gonna fall into one of those first two categories that I mentioned. So they're either gonna be someone that's done with the game and fucking gone, so then they don't feature, or they're gonna be someone that continually plays the game, just keeps farming up builds, makes 4 characters, makes multiples of 1 character, makes multiple builds, anything like that, or they're gonna do speed runs or anything like that. And then lastly, the fourth camp that we have is this vocal minority that could be present on different social medias. They could be hitting People Can Fly up on Twitter. They could be fucking hanging out on Reddit or whatever, that are complaining and saying the meta is stagnant and this and that, and Moaning Winds is too strong, and fucking these are the same people that whenever they see a build and they see Moaning Winds in the build, they go, oh yeah, it's a Moaning Winds build, who gives a fuck, like that kind of thing. But the funny thing is that group of people, right, if you change Moaning Winds and Fortress, then the next thing pulls into focus, like the previous topic that I was talking about. Then the next thing will be that no, bullet builds are too powerful. This is very famously the thing that caused the nerfs right after the game launched. Now I don't understand, and this is the point that I'm trying to make. I don't understand who People Can Fly are trying to appease with these changes and treating this game like a live service game at this moment in time. Because the point is, out of those 4 groups that I just detailed right now, groups 1 to 3 don't want any changes to the mods. Yes, they probably want changes to the meta, which I'll explain just now, but they don't want the mods to be nerfed. If you want to use Moaning Winds and you want to play it that way, then I think you should be able to do that in its current way, because it's a very specific way of playing, and you could very easily look at that and go, no, not for me. I don't like the running up to stuff in their face and fucking rolling my mouse wheel and blowing stuff up. I'm going to do something a different way. And that's the problem. So when we look at what could actually potentially solve this issue, right? When we look at what could actually potentially solve this meta issue, does it not make more sense to address it from the side of the thing that's actually causing there to be this expedient meta? And that is the completion times of the expeditions, which at some point were actually patched to be made even more, let's say, hectic, right? Once you push out these gold times, so instead of, for instance, Boomtown requiring 6 minutes and 30 seconds to get a gold time, just for argument's sake, it requires 10 minutes to get a gold time. Then what you're doing is you're taking the foot off the gas, and you're letting people experiment with different weapons and everything, because the point is a gold completion is a gold completion. That's it. Yes, you can argue that a 6-minute gold completion is better than an 8-minute gold completion, but we're talking about two different things then. Then you are interested in speed running the game. You are interested in completing something as fast as possible. And in that case, there should be mods, not mobs. There should be mods that rise to the top. There should be things that are better suited for that particular goal. The amount of time that the studio is spending on addressing a non-issue, in my opinion, and that is that certain mods should be better than others, instead of rather looking at things which are still broken in the game, or Stadia support which is still in shambles, is mind-boggling to me. I don't understand that why they are approaching this in the way of that this is a priority that must be dealt with as soon as possible, and it needs several dev posts, and it needs several, you know, weeks of discussion and fucking brain bursting, just trying to figure out how we can solve this problem, which in actual fact isn't really a problem, because this isn't a live service game, and it shouldn't be an issue that if you change this, suddenly people, you know, come back to the game. If we look at what People Can Fly Studios' goal can be from spending so much time and energy on this, then it has to be one of two things. It has to be that they're trying to essentially gear the studio behind this live service game model, and so therefore they want it to be this thing that's just constantly evolving, and mods and little knobs and stuff being tweaked and everything like that, which in a way I understand, but again, you might just be overcomplicating something which is actually relatively easy by simply just pushing the expedition timers out, and that way you essentially quiet down those people that say, I have to use Fortress to be able to get a gold completion, and I have to use the Moaning Winds meta to be able to complete certain expeditions with my pyro. So that's the one side. That could be the one goal. The other goal, of course, could be that they think that maybe by making these changes and essentially, you know, breaking this meta in half and not having people feel pressured to use Moaning Winds and Fortress, players come back and play the game, which is just not gonna happen. I don't believe there's this swath of players hanging out just going like, oh damn dude, as soon as they change that Moaning Wind shit, I'm back in, you know, me and my fucking 10,000 buddies are gonna jump in and play the shit out of this game. That's just not gonna happen. The people that are waiting on these dev posts, the people that are waiting for something to change for them to come back, are people that are waiting for more content. They're waiting for more weapons, they're waiting for more characters, they're waiting for more expeditions, they're waiting for a survival mode, they're waiting for like, so again, is your attention, and when I say your, I mean People Can Fly, is your attention not better spent elsewhere? That's it for the video. I know I went kind of like off on a tangent there, but thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about the current state of this, and you know, if you which one of those 4 camps you would place yourself into, if there's another, you know, something, an angle that I didn't consider, and just your general thoughts on this topic, which is if you're a player of Outriders, if you're someone that still enjoys the game, this is of course something that is, I suppose, a little bit concerning at this moment in time, because the likelihood of additional nerfs is always there, and so it's always something that's in the back of the mind to essentially discuss. But that's it. I'm super passionate about the game, of course, so that's why I make videos like this, and all of it is coming from a constructive criticism, you know, angle. I'm not trying to, and I want to categorically go on the record right now and say that all of the effort that the studio has made with this game, I said it on Cloud Plays' podcast, or the video we did the other night as well, is appreciated by me. There have been games that have had these kinds of problems in the past, where the studio essentially just, you know, fucking went like, okay, fuck it, we can't fix this, and backed out and just fucking took their money and ran. But that's not the case with this studio. This continued discussion with people and changes to the game and everything like that shows a group of people, a developer that believes in the brand. Now, whatever those beliefs are is of course what we discuss when we make videos like this, but nonetheless, this is a studio that believes in their product. And that, to me, that's one of the reasons why I'm still loyal to it, and it's one of the things that I also want to thank them for. So if by any chance anybody from that studio watches this, just know that you have my thanks, and I really appreciate all the effort that you make. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and an awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, Fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.